Last summer, thousands of people around the country protested after the killing of unarmed black people, mainly George Floyd, at the hands of police. Activists hoped their voices would be heard, leading to real change in policing. But in the past 24 hours, well, let's just say their hope has dimmed. Bipartisan talks in Congress on overhauling policing practices have officially collapsed. Our D.C. correspondent Bofta Yimam explains the sticking points and where we go from here. Good morning, Bofta. The question is, where do we go from here?
Well, we're going to need a lot more than what we've had. The talks have been slow coming. I think a lot of people, of course, are going to be disappointed, but will they be surprised? Not necessarily, because we've seen the top negotiators go back and forth on this pretty much every time there was any piece of momentum, Mike. Now, the anniversary marking George Floyd's death, that came and went with the hopes that would boost momentum for the bill drafted in his name. Pressure on Congress and momentum calling for action picked up then and again after the families of other police brutality victims visited Washington, D.C., and also when protest demonstrations took place in city after city. Hope continued when members of Congress drafted legislation to overhaul policing practices. But here we are right now, more talks, more talks. It did not move the needle. No improvements in the system after lead negotiators could not agree on key areas. Democratic Senator Cory Booker said it was clear that they were not making the progress that was needed. He told lead Republican negotiator Senator Tim Scott of his decision Wednesday. Booker cited ongoing disagreements over making officers personally liable for abuses. We've been talking about qualified immunity even on this show for months. Also, another sticking point, collecting national data on police agencies' use of force. Senator Scott pointed at Democrats choosing to walk away after what he said is coming to terms on big issues like banning chokeholds and increased funding for mental health programs. Here's what else the two had to say. Senator Booker saying the effort from the very beginning was to get police reform that would raise professional standards, police reform that would create a lot more transparency, and then police reform that would create accountability. And we're not able to come to agreements on those three big areas. Senator Tim Scott said this: I am deeply disappointed that Democrats have once again squandered a crucial opportunity to implement meaningful reform to make our neighborhoods safer and mend the tenuous relationship between law enforcement and communities of color. Now, Democrats previously blocked a Republican bill last year that they called too weak, while a tougher bill this year was derailed by Republicans in the Senate. So, Mike, we've seen this back and forth. It's frustrated many activists. They are saying, we protested, we did so much, and yet here we are, and our elected officials cannot come to an agreement. It's a big disappointment this morning for many.
It seems to be the case a lot of times when it comes to black and brown people of trying to be on the same page to get something done. May 25th, as you mentioned, the anniversary of George Floyd's death, that was the deadline that President Biden set to get this done. At that time, they didn't reach the deadline, but they said they were close. So we're wondering, how did they get from being close to being so far apart? And what is President Biden saying now?
Right, and I think, the reason why they were close at that point was also because they had pressure, Mike. They had pressure, they had all eyes. Infrastructure was being talked about, but it wasn't at the level we're seeing. There weren't other distractions going on, other crises happening. So they were able to maximize on that momentum and say, hey, look, we're going to recess, we're taking our breaks, but we are still in talks. But if you ask Senator Booker, even after his statement yesterday, he said it's not the end. He plans to continue talks with activists, the White House, and congressional members. President Biden stated new Justice Department policies on chokeholds and other practices, and said his administration would look for new ways, including executive orders, to what he said, living up to the American ideal of equal justice under law. In a written statement Wednesday, President Biden called George Floyd's killing a stain on the soul of America, saying, quote, "We will be remembered for how we responded to the call." And so, you know, Mike, I think when everyone looks at this again, are they surprised? No, but disappointed, of course. So many people hope that we would be able to pass something related to overhauling policing practices that have been outdated and have affected communities of color for not just in the past year or two, but for decades.